Okay, so this video will be covering the DLC content for Elden Ring and all of the ridiculously overpowered spells I use to totally annihilate all the bosses. So this is probably one of the most difficult bosses in the DLC, purely because at this point I haven't found any of the really overpowered spells that I'll find later in the game. I skipped straight over the lion, by the way, because obviously there's two. I don't want to spoil any great content releases, but yeah, they did copy paste one of their own bosses. This particular fight, obviously, I'm using like a similar setup to what I fought Melania with. You know, direct augmentation from the hat to just get extra damage out of Frost. Frost seeming to affect her a little. To be honest, Rolana was she was really fatiguing. I just needed something to give Tish more time to get in there and do some damage. Most of the time, if I'm under attack by her, I just can't attack back, basically. She was quick. I needed a spell that would, you know, go off quick enough. Glintstone Ice Crag is something that I can just about pull off. Occasionally I would swap it up when I lost aggro and try and stagger her with a bubble at the same time, but ultimately a lot of what you suffer from in the DLC is the bosses are attacking so quickly that if your summon hasn't taken aggro, you're just under a relentless bombardment, and most of the spells are just far too slow to be able to cast, so it's a lot of that. It's a lot of the same story. Nothing particularly special here. I do like that the Black Knights are sort of just a staple in the game. Obviously, if this was back in like Dark Souls 1, you wouldn't necessarily have like a named health bar for a Black Knight. They've decided that they are just going to do that sort of thing now. That's fine. The fact that Twin Blades are back in the game is cool. I like that. But ultimately, you know, this isn't meant to be like a main boss fight, is it? It's just like another mini boss, but excellent kits, interesting, you know, interesting like weapon techniques. I think these sorts of fights are actually a lot better because they're more showing you like what players will be able to do. Continuing on, this is again, it's just another knight variant. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a death knight or if it's a black knight. They're all much of the same. You know, it's going to be similar sorts of movesets and that. The death knight's obviously like following on from a sort of like Warcraft perspective. You know, it's some kind of like vampiric sort of plate wearing, you know, melee bashing character, and this is exactly that. The grabs that these guys have, giving them so much health back. It's like you could have an absolutely wicked, a wicked interaction with them, and, you know, be totally dominating them. They grab you once, and then they just fully reset their health rather than just outright killing you, which is a very unique turn. Because usually a grab could just be the end of a fight because you just die. But them fully resetting up to like almost full health or full health basically disheartens you in a lot of ways, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say that the fight is over. You could continue, but yeah, it is an interesting take. I did like these guys. All these dungeons were pretty good. Not much to say here. These were the bane of my existence until I figured out that they actually could die. Wasn't even sure that they could die in the early parts of the game, but yeah, having a few of those tree shards really made the difference, to be honest. But yeah, once you've killed one, you can kill them all. I actually really like this fight, but every content creator that I've seen in a video so far has talked about this, has all said that they didn't like it, but I thought it was a good fight. The second this guy's approaching me, I'm like, this is the Orphan of Kos. Like, and I don't know how no one's pointed that out yet. The guy's literally using the same weapon, he looks like him. This is the Orphan of Kos. The thing is clearly like decayed a bit and has not got its fleshy wings, but this is definitely the same character model. The biggest challenge about this fight is just when he's off the horse. It took me ages again to figure out that you need to jump at this part. That, like, literally all of the jumping parts have caught me out over and over and over and over again. Still not fully used to that, but yeah, that caught me out early. But once you start getting used to those mechanics that are in Elden Ring, it's actually not that bad at all. The windows for dodging things like that are actually massive. So yeah, this fight was not too difficult at all, really. There's several windows where he stands still, so I can deal with quite a lot of damage. But when he separates from that horse and he's moving around, like independently attacking with like a sort of driving charge, you've got to save your healing windows till after that whole part of the encounter's done, because that horse will charge you, then he's immediately charging you. You've got to constantly keep rolling, but you've got to time it just right. It was a good fight once I figured out that was what I had to do. It felt frustrating in the first 5 attempts, not realising that. There were many encounters that didn't actually make the cut because I just figured that they were either underwhelming or not interesting. I put this one in just purely because this particular enemy type, when you find them out in the world, oh my god, when you first fight them, they're just so difficult. So difficult. Anywhere where there's an area that is like highly constrained for movement as well, really taxing. By now, so much stronger, no challenge at all. I think Bale is probably my favourite boss of the TLC. I quite like Rolana, I quite like Mesmer, but Bale he's a very unique encounter. You immediately get so much grief as soon as you come through the door. The first time I came into this boss room, I just got killed right away. I think I got one shot. I just walked into the room and got battered. All of the interactions with Igon are just hilarious. Everything he says is just brilliant. This will continue to be a meme for years to come, I'm sure. Far more memorable fight because of the summon, which again just makes me think that all of the Souls games have moved on leaps and bounds from being this sort of Souls purist experience where you shouldn't be using the NPC summons to. You're actually missing a key part of the game if you don't listen to their dialogue at least once. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your first playthrough, I don't think that matters, but it was a big part of my experience. Bale actually on this attempt went down really easy, just purely because I managed to get my spiral spell all the way up his spine, which of course, multiple hits on the hitbox does a lot of work. Absolutely fantastic damage. But yeah, great fight. I'd be well happy to fight him again. I don't think I'm alone where I think this fight sucked. There's so many attacks that this guy on this board does where you just can't dodge it. The amount of times when he does that charge, which just made it so difficult, I think, because you have to position yourself close enough to him so he just never initiates that attack. He just ends up catching you somehow, no matter what you do. I tried dodging pretty much in every single direction. Sometimes by chance I just didn't seem to get hit, but I seem to consistently get hit by that no matter what. So that was a struggle. There you see I managed to dodge it clean. It's almost like a 45-degree angle forwards. Really was tough. Landing consistent spells on him as well. I had to have a harsh tracking spell like Stars of Ruin to be able to land an attack. But he is kind of all over the place. I think sometimes when he's just sort of like stood still, I had a few spirals that actually were performing quite well, but then they just start moving around again, and I just couldn't finish him. I just needed something that was more consistently landing damage. But yeah, I know there were several parts where I just couldn't seem to finish him. Even this now, it's like he's getting towards the end of his health bar, and yet I just need to finish him off, and he just won't quite die yet. Once he's on you, he's on you, and he kept pasting all of my summons as well, so there was often these latter halves of the fight where I've just, I've got no windows to attack, and so many of my spells just, they're not quick casting. This is probably one fight where I probably didn't benefit by having so many of the NPC summons on board, just purely because of what it did for its health pool. I do so much damage to this thing, but it just seems to put such a little dent in its health pool. So you can tell what adding the summons actually does for it. And it would be fine if they were constantly taking aggro, but he does still sometimes just decide he's going to charge me. Which in this room, where I don't actually have anything to manipulate the way that he moves, is kind of rough. It doesn't matter how far away you put yourself, you've either got your back against a wall or you're not far enough away, which is problematic at times. I was looking for the big ending where I just absolutely blast him with Comet Azure or something. And that greed did get me killed several times over. I died on this way more times than what I should have done. I think the bosses that killed me the most are Radahn and the guy on the boar. R'hllana did kill me a lot, but yeah, that was mainly down to the fact that I didn't have any kind of powerful fallbacks yet. At this point in the game, I actually I took on the Hippo quite late, really. I sort of explored everywhere else. I figured this was the final castle, to be honest. I didn't know there was anything more after this, so I didn't want to start all the endgame stuff right away. this was a good fight. Usually, usually I would expect by now there would have been so many fights where I absolutely hated them because of their difficulty. Because there's a lot of really poor design choices that From Software will sometimes employ to make a fight hard. But any boss where the hitboxes are, you know, nice and tiny, and you know you can keep everything all on one screen, I think is usually a much better shout than having something that's got an absolutely enormous hitbox where the camera can't even follow the creature all the way through the fight. And that's just, I think, where we're at really, like with the game. You know, the small, more humanoid encounters are often far more interesting than any of the ones where we're against like these massive dragons that are just like absolute titans. Kind of sucks that I got this one, but I didn't get it, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so I mean, Mesmer's first phase is no like it's no cakewalk, but you know it's manageable. Again, every single mob in the DLC that's sort of worth the salt has got like these gap closer engagement dives where, you know, they're sort of like right on you as soon as you come through the door. Did notice that a lot in this DLC. Every boss is not waiting for you to buff. If you want to do it, you got to do it outside. They're basically on you right away. There's a lot of anime style attacks. There's a lot of attacks where if they are going to put their weapon in the ground, they do these AoEs all around, so you can't just like constantly step around to the side of the side or the rear of the enemy. You've got to like move out. It like gives them a full reset, which puts them in a position to use some of their other attacks, which constantly means that, you know, you basically can't play to a particular strategy where you just constantly like keep moving around them, have to disengage and re-engage. It does give them the advantage because some of their attacks at these mid-ranges are far worse than anything that they do while they're up close. A lot of the times, again, there's visual effects that obscure what's going on. You can't be 100% sure when you're this far out, like whether or not your spells are even going to hit. Thankfully, the tracking's good. I'm sure this would be far more difficult if you were melee, because you wouldn't necessarily be able to see what the fuck's going on. But at the same time, I think a lot of the dodging stays the same. You know, you're just always dodging whenever the snake comes your way, and then you just swing and hope you hit something. Probably follow the summons if you've brought them into the fight, because they're going to know where the enemy is at least. But yeah, it's all lock-ons anyway, isn't it? This was kind of a weird twist. I didn't actually know that this this enemy was even going to be in the game. But yeah, lore-wise, this is more interesting. Is this supposed to be like the actual twisted, weird creature that has been influencing everything from the start? It's like that it, you know, you start to think actually everything's just worshipping some weird false prophet, because this definitely doesn't look like it's got our best interests at heart. But yeah, it's like every Souls game. You know, periodically something else seizes divine power and then everything worships it. But why? It's like, why would anybody be worshipping this thing? It does seem to have like some ethereal power of some kind, but I certainly can't imagine what I would consider this to be the peak Divine Lord. This was a reasonable fight. I didn't think it anything special. It was unique. It ties in with all of the lore and a lot of the items that exist. You know, there's a lot of interesting visuals for the spells, but yeah, it didn't exactly give me a pasting. It's not my most memorable fight, but I don't think it's a bad one either. I'm glad they went and expanded the lore for the fingers this way. this fight was cool. Everything that you were thinking about from the base game, where you just like, you know, wonder if they can expand on this. They basically did. I think that's good fan service. This fight didn't give me too much trouble really. Certainly not as much trouble as the wolves approaching it. But yeah, it was good to see another like swing at the madness stuff. I think that's good. I like all the frenzies playing like nonsense. I think it's been pretty good. Even just running around as a character with yellow eyes has been wonderful before. But yeah, finding ways to introduce the madness status effect into combat. I've seen some of the spells and some of the usage. It's certainly a unique take. I like the fact as well, if you use those spells you end up going like a bit mad yourself. It's potentially quite good. Obviously I swapped up all of my gear here to just have like really good madness resistance. I think it's focus is tied to that maybe. But yeah, once I got that on lock, it was just a case of just applying enough damage and then I was okay. A lot of this stuff just ends up being, you know, like more sort of like basic telling AoE, and it became a case of attrition. Did have to drink a lot of flasks, but you know, as long as I gained enough distance, that there were reasonable windows to attack. The biggest problem is, obviously, like I say, I did just take a lot of damage because I'm dodging more backwards rather than to the side, but not too hard a fight. I didn't think this fight was that hard at all, but I was looking for a creative way to showcase a load of my new spells while I was doing it. And then by the time I realised that it was actually like a 3-phase fight, and it actually has a colossal size health pool, was quite far in, and then I realised that actually I need to be using my hard hitting spells because I need to get through each of its reincarnations as quick as possible. Otherwise, I would just literally be stuck running out of mana or running out of health again on attrition, and that is kind of a mistake. Like I say, because essentially what you've got here is you've got a boss that just falls down a couple of times and has a colossal size health pool, but it just gives you that false sense of security that it's actually much smaller, just because you can burst it down once or twice. But yeah, I genuinely wasn't sure after it got up the second time whether or not I had to just burst it down again, or if I was missing something, like this was perhaps a gimmick fight and I needed to like go collect an item or a special weapon. Maybe I had to interact with something in the boss room, you know. I've always got that in my back of my mind whenever a boss gets back up. But yeah, there was nothing of the sort. I wasn't sure if it was a certain amount of these like critical strikes I had to do or something just to kill it. But yeah, I thought it could have been anything. I was also worried that it was going to transform and become something else, or maybe someone else was going to come down, but just can't be sure, can you? It does like a desperate AoE attack there, but it's like, just compared to everything else that you fight in this DLC, this really isn't doing any kind of major numbers. I think you are supposed to fight this a lot early on. Possibly like right after you fought the hippo. Difficult to say really, because obviously there's no map guiding you which way you should fight all the bosses. Okay, so originally I didn't actually record for the first Divine Beast Dancing Line because I just thought it was a shit boss, and then you know when I'm like start recording some of the other bosses, I'm like actually some of these bosses are good. That is just it's not one to write off the entire series. So I thought you know I'd just put this second one in instead. Obviously the advantage here is I have Torrent. I think this one's got a few different other spells as well to make up for the fact that you can fight on Torrent, but there's also a few basilisks here. I don't think these fights were particularly tough. They're difficult to dodge grabs when you're like trapped in the room. Having a huge hitbox, it got hit by like my spiral attack like loads and loads and loads, which made fighting the first one a lot easier. This one, obviously, I didn't really want to play ball with it. I literally just wanted to jump in time and just kiting it around, blasting it from range. I just feel like any big hitbox monster where you just can't seem to like get around them, and they just they overwhelm you with size. It's just annoying. The game is you play it at a certain camera angle and there's nothing you can do to adjust the camera, so you're at a huge disadvantage when something like that is all over you up in melee range. And that is where this boss pretty much wants to fight you a lot of the time. This particular one wasn't so bad because it was doing a lot of casts and stuff, but it was far more manageable. But yeah, as soon as it starts doing this writhing around stuff, it is looking to like grab onto you, and that makes it far less desirable. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if I don't have to fight that ever again. It's just didn't impress me much. Well, here it is, the apex predator in his prime. You always hear people say, like what would happen if like this guy or this guy fought prime Mike Tyson. Well, this is the Mike Tyson of Elden Ring for damn sure, isn't it? Everybody knows that Radahn is the big boy, but yeah, we finally got an opportunity to fight him, and every single attack has some ridiculous fucking extra AoE in the second phase, so I had to resort to looking at guides for specific builds in order to get the damage to be able to contend with him. Actually didn't feel so bad about doing this. It's the same sort of category as when I had to use the lightning protect shield on Nameless King in Dark Souls 3. Impenetrable Thorns is broken. The set that I've got on with it, very much broken as well. But it's the only way to get through a boss that is doing so much damage that I just couldn't stay around for that long. He's already killed my summon. Like I say, no regret. An overpowered strategy for an overpowered boss. I think that's fair. But yeah, couldn't get over actually how much damage this was doing to every other boss. I've recently fought Melania with the same sort of spell, and it's still like she is still a tough fight. But yeah, this spell decimates everyone.